Welcome to the Tell Me Something Good podcast. Ranked by the International Association of Awesome Podcasts as the best podcast in the history of podcasts. Wait, is that a thing? I don't think that's a thing. Anyway, seeking to shine a light on all that is good in an ever-darkening world of negativity. Here's your host, Clint Swindall.
Hey everybody, I'm Clint Swindall, and this is the Tell Me Something Good podcast, the show that is all about creating a more positive world by overcoming negativity. It is my goal each episode to engage your mind, encourage your heart, or enlighten your soul. I am so happy you're here. This is episode number 2 of the Tell Me Something Good podcast, entitled, What is this thing we call negativity? Brought to you by Let's Talk Smack, an app that provides daily nudges to take your social media game to a whole new level. If you're wanting to have a more engaging presence on social media, either personally or professionally, you need the Let's Talk Smack app to help you form a plan. Check it out wherever you get your apps. Here we are, friends, episode number 2. And they said it would never last. If you are just now joining us, I would encourage you to jump back at some point and listen to episode number 1. We spent some time laying out the format of the show and talking about what we're going to try to achieve with this podcast. In a nutshell, it's going to be part education, part entertainment, part inspiration, and part celebration. When I'm not in a studio recording this podcast, I spend a great deal of my time working with clients to develop better leaders, either as a keynote speaker at conferences. You remember conferences, right? They were large gatherings of humans meeting together to develop themselves and their companies. They used to happen every day before the coronavirus shut down the world, and they will happen again. For 2 decades, I have studied the impact of positivity and negativity in our lives. One significant observation I have made is the basic misunderstanding of what negativity is. So let's start there. I'm going to share some startling news, friends. The person you wake up lying next to every morning is negative. The person you sit next to at work is negative. The person looking back at you in the mirror every day is negative. That's right, we're all negative. You see, according to the National Science Foundation, we each have up to 60,000 thoughts a day. And of these thoughts, 80% of them are negative.
What?
I know, it's crazy. And what's even more amazing is that 95% of our negative thoughts are the same thoughts as the day before. So not only do we focus primarily on negative things, we make it worse by reliving the same sad, miserable stories over and over. So how can that be? Some of you listening right now consider yourself to be very positive. I consider myself to be very positive. So how can it be that we have so many negative thoughts? Well, research shows we have what is known as a negativity bias. It's a tendency to pay more attention to negative experiences than neutral or positive experiences. Oddly, even when a negative experience is not significant, we still tend to focus on it over the neutral or positive experiences. Here's an example for those of you who have children. Little Johnny participates in a baseball game where he plays well. He gets feedback from both of his parents. His mother says, "You did a great job." And his father says, "You've done better." Based on the negativity bias, his father's comment will have a more significant impact on little Johnny's psychological state and future behaviors than his mother's comment. And the impact of the negativity bias is the same in adults. Here's another example. Karen gets a quarterly performance review from her boss and receives positive feedback throughout the entire review. At the very end, the boss was critical in one area of her performance. Based on the negativity bias, Karen is more likely to record that one criticism in her memory bank than she is to recall all the positives in her review. She is likely to categorize the entire experience as negative when it actually was very positive. Again, even though I consider myself a pretty positive person, I fall into the same trap. I spoke at a conference in San Diego earlier this year before the shutdown. The client did a survey of the entire conference and provided the feedback he received on my presentation. There were about 150 people in the audience that day. 94 of them took the time to write a comment in the survey. 93 of those comments were very positive. One person said she liked the speaker from last year better.
You have got to be kidding me.
Yeah, she didn't say she didn't like me. She said she liked the speaker from last year better. One comment out of 94. 93 were incredible, and that one comment got to me. I moped around the office for an hour after I read that report, focused on that one little comment. Oh, the power of negativity bias. So if this thing called negativity bias can have such a big impact in our lives, it's important to know why we have it. Some people believe it comes from our knuckle-dragging ancestors. Our ancestors had to work hard to survive. A simple trip out to gather food required a constant effort to deal with threats. So they say to survive, they learned to identify potentially threatening conditions. While they were looking for dinner, apparently they were trying to avoid being dinner. Our ancestors constantly looked for the bad stuff. If they didn't, they likely didn't survive. Survival required our ancestors to spend most of their time looking for the bad stuff. So those who believe it was passed along from our ancestors think this self-preservation was passed along to us as negativity bias, a technical definition assigned by some clever behavioral scientist. Now, while I'm sure this person is gifted, as are all the people who have written about it over the years, I think they're wrong. Without needing to get into a debate over evolution, I think it's much simpler than that. I believe we get programmed from birth by the people we're around, and then we make choices throughout our lives that make us lean toward negativity. So, not only did they get that wrong, I believe they got the name wrong as well. Negativity bias. These behavioral scientists believe looking for bad stuff is negativity. Wrong. There is a big difference between bad stuff and negativity. Bad stuff is what happens to us. Negativity is the constant complaining about the bad stuff. Bad stuff is what life gives us that is often out of our control. Negativity is the excessive pessimism about the bad stuff. Look, if you lose your job, that is bad stuff. It doesn't become negativity until you complain about how bad losing your job was and how no one will ever hire you. Again, the lost job is not negativity. It's just a bad thing that has to be processed. If you have a mean boss, that is bad stuff. It doesn't become negativity until you complain to anyone who will listen about how horrible your boss is and how bad bosses always seem to find you. Again, the mean boss is not negativity. It's just a bad thing that has to be processed. I just finished writing my new book entitled Tell Me Something Good, and in it I share one simple formula. BS plus CC plus EP equals N. Again, BS plus CC plus EP equals N. So what's included in the formula? First of all, the BS is probably not what you think. You've probably had plenty of bullshit in your life lately, but that's not what BS stands for in this formula. Here it is. When you add bad stuff, BS, to constant complaining, CC, and excessive pessimism, EP, you get negativity, N. As I mentioned, bad stuff is going to happen to us all, and that bad stuff is not what makes us negative. It's the constant complaining and excessive pessimism that makes us negative. So before we can begin taking a look at how to overcome negativity in this podcast, we need to have a common understanding of what it is. And that, my friends, is how I define it. Add constant complaining and excessive pessimism to everyday bad stuff, and you have yourself negativity. I do believe, however, there are benefits to having complainers and pessimists in our lives, and we'll be talking about how in the world these two things can be benefits in an upcoming episode. In the meantime, let's find some good stuff. The negativity bias we all have keeps us looking for the bad stuff. Most people are surrounded by good stuff. Whether it's as simple as having a roof over our head or clean clothes on our body, we have good stuff in our lives. One way to remind ourselves of that is to see or hear what is happening in other people's lives. So I want to share something good happening in my life in a segment we'll call
In Search of the Good Stuff.
Like many of you, I have found the quarantine to be life-changing. For me, it's meant I'm not on a stage speaking at conferences and conventions. There is nothing I enjoy more than getting on a stage to transform the way people lead themselves and those around them. For many years, I've known I need to offer what I have to share in the virtual world. I've allowed the busyness of running all over the globe to keep me from taking the time to develop virtual programs like coaching programs and training. So that's my something good this week. Rather than sit at home and wait for the quarantine to end and meetings to resume, I've begun building some new programs to deliver online. If I can't do it on a stage right now, at least I'll have a way to make a difference in the virtual world. I'm looking forward to sharing those things with you as they become available. So for a guy who has been needing to do that for some time, that is something good. I do my best to focus on the good in my life because I realize I'm going to be surrounded by ridiculous complaining. There is no better place to find it than social media. Some people, they present their perfect little life, while others use it as an opportunity to complain about nonsense. I used to block these people so I wouldn't have to see their constant complaining, but not anymore. No, I now use their complaining as a source of humor. I log into social media now just to see,
what are they bitching about now?
I saw someone on my Facebook feed this week complaining about the traffic in an area under construction to improve the flow of traffic. People, it's going to get worse before it gets better. It's construction. You do realize the reason the traffic is rerouted and slow is because they're investing millions of dollars into a new road system that will, wait for it, speed up the traffic. I also saw someone on my Facebook feed complaining about the temperature and quality of the takeout food he brought home from his local restaurant. He said he was appalled that it, and I quote, wasn't nearly as good as it was the last time I ate at the restaurant. Hey man, the last time you ate at the restaurant, they brought it out on a screaming hot ceramic plate they put together just minutes before it arrived in front of your face. Your takeout food bounced around in a styrofoam box throughout your trip to the house. Depending on what type of food you picked up, by the time it made it from the plastic fork to your mouth, it probably changed significantly from what you experienced the last time you ate at the restaurant. I bet your social media feeds have a few of these people as well. We have a choice. We can let the perpetual bellyachers get under our skin and scream, "Come on, man, stop complaining about petty stuff when so many people are hurting." Or we can keep our eyes locked on the good in any situation. And the good here is that this guy got to pick up takeout at a time when some people just wish they could eat out. What's nice about social media is we can scroll to the next post and read something positive. That's not always true when it comes to the news. If you watch or listen to the news at all, you know we are bombarded with negative messages. They know we have a negativity bias and they feed us what we want. We need some good stuff. And here on the Tell Me Something Good podcast, we will take time to hear some good news in these crazy times. So let's uncover some good news in a segment I like to call
Good News from Around the World.
And here's what I found. An anonymous donor provided a $1 million gift to a California hospital. The gift wasn't for supplies. The gift wasn't for research. No, the gift was for the employees. The donor requested the money be divided amongst the hospital staff. The donation was made to a California hospital. Although the donor opted to remain anonymous, they did include a note with their financial gift saying, "Thank you for standing up and staying up to care for our community. This human kindness is what makes you heroic." As per the donor's wishes, the donation will be distributed amongst each and every one of the hospital staffers who have worked at the facility for at least 1 year, from the security guards and lab technicians to the janitors and mailroom workers. Full-time employees will be receiving an $800 bonus, while part-time employees will be receiving $600 bonuses. Staffers are rejoicing over the gift after spending weeks of tirelessly combating the coronavirus outbreak. There are so many people who keep the hospital running, said one of the nurses. Nurses and doctors are getting the praise, but we couldn't do it without the staff who clean the floors, deliver supplies, fix machines, everything. It's a team, and I'm glad the whole team is getting a thank you. What an awesome, awesome gift. And there's this from the Good News Network. For years, dogs have been helping to keep humans safe by sniffing out narcotics, IEDs, pests, natural disasters, cancer, Parkinson's disease, and now, yes, you guessed it, the coronavirus. A medical charity in England that has successfully trained dogs to detect malaria is now attempting to train man's best friend to identify the smell of COVID-19. The charity, called Medical Detection Dogs, is partnering with the Tropical Medicine and Hygiene School in London, along with Durham University, to begin trialing dogs for the job. Dr. Claire Guest, a behavioral psychologist and principal member of the charity, says there is absolutely no reason why a dog can't detect the virus. The aim is that dogs will be able to screen anyone, including those who are asymptomatic, and tell us whether they need to be tested. This would be fast, effective, and non-invasive, and make sure the limited testing resources are only used where they are really needed. We know that other respiratory diseases like COVID-19 change our body odor, so there is a very high chance that dogs will be able to detect it. This new diagnostic tool could revolutionize our response to COVID-19 in the short term, but particularly in the months to come, and could be profoundly impactful. Professor Steve Lindsay at Durham University says if the research is successful, we could use COVID-19 detection dogs at airports at the end of the epidemic to rapidly identify people carrying the virus. This would help prevent the reemergence of the disease after we have brought the present epidemic under control. And that, my friends, is some good news from around the world. All right, everybody, we are about to wrap up. Before I end this episode with a challenge, I want to remind you that this episode of Tell Me Something Good has been brought to you by Let's Talk Smack, an app that provides daily nudges to take your social media game to a whole new level. If you're wanting to have a more engaging presence on social media, either personally or professionally, you need the Let's Talk Smack app to help you form a plan. Check it out wherever you get your apps. And now the challenge. Before you come back for the next episode, I challenge you to do two things. 1, think about the definition I provided for negativity. Think about how bad stuff combines with constant complaining and excessive pessimism to make negativity. And ask yourself this question. If Clint got to the person who knows me best in this world, and he asked them if I am constantly complaining about my challenges, or if I am excessively pessimistic about the future, what would they say? If they say yes, then you have found the podcast to help you overcome negativity. If they say no, then you have found the podcast to help you enhance the outlook of those around you. Either way, welcome home to Tell Me Something Good. And 2, each Tuesday is what I refer to as Text Tuesday. I scroll through the contact list in my phone and find somebody I have not communicated with in a long time. Life gets busy and we lose contact. Every Tuesday morning, I find someone on that list and send up a prayer for them. I send them a text telling them I'm thinking about them and hoping all is well. I challenge you to do the same. In a world that sometimes seems to have lost its civility, we can bring it back in our own little world, one text at a time. So the moment this podcast ends, find someone in your phone and send the text. Well, that's all for today's episode of the Tell Me Something Good podcast. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. If you can, leave me a rating and review. Your support will help us spread positivity to the world and help get this new podcast off the ground. Also, visit findthegoodinlife.com. While you're there, you can share your good stuff or ask questions for the podcast. In addition to finding all the links to join us on social media, you'll find 3 big buttons that will direct you to everything you need to know about Tell Me Something Good. Thanks for listening. Until next week, I'll be praying for God to bless you in mighty ways. Now, get out there and love on somebody.
You've been listening to the Tell Me Something Good podcast. The content of the podcast is meant to engage, encourage, and enlighten you to become more positive. It's not meant to diagnose, treat, or replace the personalized care provided by a trained professional. If you're struggling with depression or mental health issues, please reach out to a counselor for diagnosis and treatment. Until next time, be positive, people.